Okay. I'd like to welcome everybody. Start the meeting off. If everybody would please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Hey there, buddy. We were going to miss you.
Eric. I'd like to welcome everybody. This is trying to be our annual Medina City School Board, Medina City Council and Administration meeting. However, last year was put on hold a little bit because of the COVID, but now we're back meeting again, which is good because now we have a better opportunity to share our ideas and plans for the future. Prior to getting started, I guess I would turn it over to Mr. Skidmore to call the school board meeting to order.
Mr. Coyne, and thank you for having us out tonight with the Medina School Board. And we appreciate being here to talk about the commonalities between the district and the city. And as we call our meeting, I'd like to call our meeting to order for the school board. And if you could please call roll, Mr. Chambers.
Mr. Hilberg. Ms. Pavlik.
Here.
Mr. Ross.
Here.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Here.
Mr. Skidmore.
Here.
Thank you.
And we will, should we go ahead and approve our agenda now, or should we can come back later when we're in?
This is part of the agenda, so the joint meeting.
Okay, all right. Very good, we'll turn it back over to you.
All right, thank you. To get started, I think it's, since we've been away from each other, and I know most people know everybody, but we'll just go around the room so everybody gets an understanding again of what position we hold in the city and what position as far as everybody holds on the school board side. So, Mr. Rose, if you can start us off.
Thank you, Mr. President. Paul Rose, Medina City Council at Large.
Jim Shields, Ward 4, and Ward 4 encompasses the area from roughly Lafayette Road to all the way over to 57, which would be Canevin and Root areas of the city.
John Corn, I'm president of the council.
Denny Simpson, Ward 2, which I have Sidney Fenn Claggett, Medina High School, and
Garfield, right?
Garfield,
Yeah, don't forget that one.
and I'm at Northrop. Thank you.
Eric Heffinger, Ward 3, and I got Heritage.
Jess Hazeltine, Ward 1. I have nothing. I do have the Career Center, though, but it is not a Medina City school.
Okay, Mayor, if we can start with you and just go around.
I'm Dennis Hanwha. I'm the Mayor and Safety Director for the city. Welcome.
Dino Piccoli, Service Director for Medina City. Thank you.
Jansen Worley, Parks Director for the city.
Keith Thurman, Finance Director for the city.
Ed Kinney, Medina Police Chief.
Mina Pazitka, Director of Pupil Services for Medina City Schools.
I'm Chris Clark, Assistant Superintendent.
John Burkhart, Director of Business Affairs.
Amy Busby, Director of Community Relations.
Rebecca Parkhurst, Vice President of the School Board.
David Chambers, Treasurer of the schools.
Aaron Sable, Superintendent of the schools.
Rob Skidmore, 2021 President.
Ron Ross, Board Member. Thank you for having us.
Valerie Pavlik, Board Member.
Well, again, welcome. And now that we recollect everybody once again after all these years, I think the agenda is pretty short for our side, just to kind of interact a little bit about what we've been doing from our collaborative efforts and maybe get an idea from the school's perspective of some of your future plans. At least from a city's perspective, as you know, we've been working diligently over the past months, I guess, trying to solve a few issues we have with regard to the city, including one is the municipal court. That's been in the papers a lot. We do have a solution to that. We're going to be working with the county to relocate our municipal court from across the street over to the old 1969 courthouse on the square, which is a good addition, and it makes a lot of sense to have all the courts located in one location rather than spread out. It makes it a little easier for the lawyers to figure out where they're going to go. That's always helpful. So we've been working on that, and we've been working on a lot of other issues with respect to the parks, and we can get into that and the other city projects. We've been working through our budgets. We do a little bit different on budget processing. We already started our budgets. We usually do a year-long budgeting, and we do a 5-year budget. I think you guys knew that, and we plan ahead, and we do something different than many other communities, and it served us very well over the years. we provide budgets to each of the department heads and give them a number that they can spend. And if they save any of the money, they get to keep it. We don't take it back. And then they can save it up for projects that they have in the future or some specific project they want to do. As long as they save their money up for it, they could do that project. And it worked out very well. They've been very fiscally responsible over the years, and we've been doing this for almost 20 years now. And, we're still in pretty good financial shape over that period of time. So we appreciate the efforts from the administration and the rest of the council members in going through this process. It kind of gets monotonous over the year because we don't do it in one session, we do it over the whole year. And each department head has to prepare and meet with us to go over their budgets throughout the year, and it seems to work very well. So I guess I'll turn it back over to the schools to talk about any kind of the future plans that you have in the district, or future ideas or developments that we may need to be aware of. I don't know who wants to take that over.
Oh, good evening. I appreciate the opportunity for us to be able to get together and talk about the things that are happening in the city as well as the school district. I was just talking to Mr. Skidmore, or maybe it was Mr. Ross, right before the meeting, and asked me, was there this type of relationship in other school districts I've been a part of, or is this unique to Medina? And I've been in 4 different school districts, and I have to say this is unique to Medina, the kind of collaborative relationship as well as the common goals when it comes to the schools and when it comes to our students. As you know, it's been a crazy year in the district as we've been dealing with the COVID situation. We did end the year on a positive note with our students' graduation in our football stadium, which I anticipate is going to be a new tradition. We got a lot of positive feedback from our parents as well as community members about our students being able to graduate from their home turf rather than down at Akron. I think it's good for our community and our local businesses as well. I would have to assume that many of our families, rather than going to lunch or dinner in downtown Akron, took advantage of the opportunity to come here to Medina Square to have lunch. We ended our school year with the last couple of days with a reduction in the COVID parameters that we needed to follow, and that was in line with Governor DeWine's change in mandate and reduction in requirements. The biggest one was masks. As we've gone through the pandemic, the requirements for school districts have been somewhat different than they have been for businesses or other entities. There's been separate mandates placed on schools, and I think that's for obvious reasons because we're dealing with young children in an environment where they don't have a choice but to attend. So we had some stricter parameters in place throughout the course of the school year. And those parameters seem to work. Generally, for the size of our district, we had fairly low cases of COVID and saw very little to no spread actually occurring within the school district. So for that, it was a success. What was even more successful is our return focus to academics. At approximately halfway through this year, we were able to return to some projects that we initiated last year. And we've been working on the portrait of a graduate, which I know many of the people here took part in that process. And that is defining what qualities we want to see out of all of our students when they leave Medina City Schools. So that's a vision of our students that's created not only by the school district, but by the students, the parents, and the community as a whole. I'm happy that we were able to complete that project. In our last board meeting, our Board of Education actually approved and adopted our portrait of a graduate. So that initiative is going to carry us into the next school year. In addition, we are wrapping up our strategic planning process. Next year is actually our 5th year of the strategic plan that we put in place 4 years ago. We were able to move through and complete that plan under budget as well as early. So we spent the second half of this year not only working on the portrait, but also working on the strategic planning process. That process still is underway. I'm hopeful that within the next month we will be able to share with the board where we're at with that strategic planning process and start making that available to the community. The strategic plan is going to directly coincide or work with our portrait of a graduate. We call the portrait of a bee our North Star. So it's general qualities in students that are going to direct decisions that we make moving forward, so that has an obvious direct impact on our next strategic plan, which we approximate will be a 3 to 5 year plan moving forward. The other big initiative that we had in place last school year, I think we actually had one community meeting, is we began looking at our student population and discussing redistricting and taking a look at our facilities. We had the Ohio Government Facilities Commission come in and take a look at all of our facilities, and they rated them in terms of repairs, replacement, updates to all of those facilities. The next phase to that is bringing our community, our staff, and our students in to get feedback on the direction that we go in terms of redistricting as well as our potential facilities. We are going to start the process completely over heading into the fall. We think this is important because we're in a very different situation since moving through the pandemic. So we want to make sure that people have an opportunity to voice their concerns or their wants or their wishes for the district moving forward. So that's going to be a major initiative in the fall. In terms of redistricting, the reason why we're exploring redistricting, which hasn't been done for, I would say, 15 years approximately in the district, is because we've had a shift in our student population. Some of our newer facilities are becoming very full. Waite currently is our largest population-wise elementary building. Garfield is currently our lowest. So what we're looking at doing is adjusting enrollment across the elementary buildings to create more even enrollment across the district. This is for multiple reasons. First of all, of course, it's financial. We want to make sure we're fiscally responsible in providing our students with the education that they need. And one way to do that could be through consolidation. The other reason is allowing us the opportunity to diversify our district as a whole. This is something that came up as a very important item in our strategic planning survey. Right now, we have community schools at our elementary level, which is very important to the school district and the community. For our district our size, that's fairly unique to have community schools like we do. But what that creates is it creates disproportionality in terms of wealth across the district. So one of the things we will be looking at and discussing with the community is a potential way to balance that out through the redistricting process. And the big goal with that is to ensure that all of our students have equal access to all variables of education, which we strive right now to do, but becomes a much easier task if we're more heterogeneous across our enrollment. Since we need to redistrict down at the elementary levels, we're also taking a look at our middle schools. Now's the time to do it if we're going to be looking at facilities and redistricting. We did have discussion at the end of last year about potentially going down to a single middle school and having an upper elementary school. That was one of our plans. If that were to occur, that would likely result in Root being a upper elementary building, a 5-6 building, and then Claggett being the middle school, which location-wise makes sense because it provides our 8th grade students the opportunity to actually come to the high school and participate in high school classes. I do want to make sure it's clear that that is not a decision that's been made. That's simply a discussion, and that's why we need to pull the community, our staff, and our teachers together. I do not foresee any changes to our high school. Our high school is doing very well with its current setup, and the facility's in great condition. In terms of potential construction and facilities, the main buildings that were identified by the state include Garfield, Fenn, Claggett, and the reason why is age. I think it's pretty obvious that the age of those buildings compared to the other buildings in our district, they warrant more attention. So what we will talk to the community about is potential updates to those buildings and/or replacement. And one of the formulas that the state uses is they compare the cost to replace versus the cost to renovate, and then they make a recommendation. Right now, we have recommendations for replacement for Claggett and Fenn. And again, we're going to have more discussion whether we move that direction. Just because the state makes that recommendation doesn't mean that that's the direction we need to go. And the last thing that I want to do is recommend any kind of a bond issue or a levy to our board if it's something that our community isn't supportive of. So that's literally going to be a decision we're going to be making in collaboration with the committee, at least in terms of my recommendation to the board. And then, of course, the board would have final vote on that decision. One area we did decide to move forward with, which we were holding off, is air conditioning. As I'm sure most people know here, we have several buildings, Claggett, Fenn, and Canavan, half a Canavan, that do not currently have air conditioning. This is something that has been a concern for a very long time. I know when I came to the district 5 years ago, it's one of the first concerns that was brought to me by staff as well as parents. We knew we had the possibility of redistricting as well as looking at facilities down the road, so we were hesitant to put a lot of money into that, knowing that there could be some major construction to some of the facilities. However, if any good came out of the pandemic, it was some of the ESSER funds that we received in order to help us pay for all the COVID changes that we had to make. Part of those funds can be used for climate control as well as air filtration within facilities. And we're looking to use that money in order to install air conditioning in those 3 buildings. Even though we're using those federal dollars to do that, we want to make sure we're doing it in a responsible way. So right now, this summer, we are planning on having full centralized air condition put into Canavan, which will be, I don't want to say easy, but easier than doing at Fenn and Claggett, because half the facility is fairly new and already has centralized heating and cooling, so that's going to be expanded to the entire building. We also don't foresee any replacement or major changes to Canavan as we go through the facilities process. In regards to Fenn, Fenn was one of our biggest challenges simply because the electricity within the facility couldn't handle air units. We did look into putting air units or window units in there quite a while ago, similar to what we've done at Garfield, and it just wasn't a possibility without major updates to the electrical systems within the buildings. So we are going to, this summer, be upgrading the electrical systems, and then we are going to install window units. Over at Claggett, we are also installing portable air conditioning units, which we have rented in the past, so that will save us money over the course of time. We did price out the cost to put in centralized air at Fenn and Claggett as well, and we were looking at approximately a $3 million project for all 3 buildings combined. Again, we were hesitant to put that kind of money into Fenn and Claggett, considering they were at the top of the list in terms of looking at updates. And that's why we've gone towards the portable units. So that $3 million project turned into, I think the final amount was around, about 800,000, a little under 800,000 compared to the 3 million. And then if we do major changes to Claggett or Fenn down the road, those portable units have a lifespan of approximately 5 to 10 years, so they're something that we can resale if we no longer have a need for them. Other than that, it'll be jumping into our new strategic plan heading into next school year. I'm extremely excited. I just talked with our curriculum department today about it. 5 years ago, we put together a strategic plan, which a lot of it was getting ourselves back on our feet. Our parents, our students, and our staff were very clear that there were a lot of things they wanted returned to the district that unfortunately was reduced due to budget constraints prior to my time. The board was able to work and make sure the money was available so we could add classes back to our high school and our middle schools, have a greater focus on career education, move towards a teaming model at the middle schools, decrease class sizes down at the elementary schools. So our next strategic plan moving into next year, I'm excited because it's really kicking things up a notch. It's like we put the framework in place and now the house is going to start coming together. We're getting into the exciting, actual direct impact on all of our classroom type of things as we're looking at Learning 21 and 21st century education. So we are looking at being amongst the leaders in the state of Ohio, and I'll even say across the nation, in regards to the academics that we're providing for our students when it comes to career-based, hands-on, students learning through questioning and exploring so that they're prepared for the real world. And in helping us do that, we've been working with Battelle for Kids, which is an Ohio company based in Columbus that's renowned nationally, and we're in a program called SOAR, and we have the opportunity to work with a group of districts across the state and also interact with districts across the country. I actually had the opportunity to talk with districts in California when we were in the beginning of the pandemic so we could share how we're going to be handling or how we were going to be handling the pandemic moving forward. So we've really taken great steps, and the board has really done a lot of, in my opinion, a lot of great business to really move our district forward. In terms of finances, we are looking at a potential levy in 2023-24, and that date has bounced around a little bit. That is a year to 2 years beyond what we had promised the community we would go with our renewal, which was passed approximately 3-4 years ago, which wasn't for new money. It didn't increase any tax dollars. It kept us stable. As we look into a potential levy moving forward, we will be looking at an increase in order to continue to provide the kind of academics and the type of programming that we've extended over the last several years. We're going to need additional funds in order to make that happen. We are currently in deficit spending, which means we're spending from our savings account. That doesn't mean that we're in a bad financial position. We're actually doing very well right now. But what it means is we have to be very aware of what's coming down the road as our savings decreases, and at the same time making sure we have a safety net with extra funds within that budget as well. So we have a lot coming up, a lot of new and old stuff together. I really feel like we're heading in a positive direction, and I know it's a breath of fresh air to end this school year, especially with the pandemic, but I'm excited for next year.
Thank you. I guess I have one follow-up question, if I may. You talked about your strategic plan and moving forward and maybe the lessons that we've learned through the COVID with online learning, at-home learning, and maybe the challenges or opportunities available for our local community. And maybe, since we're talking about collaborative efforts, and if there was any discussion about maybe collaborative efforts across the nation by having online classes with other states, other schools in other states, just so you get more of a well-rounded development of students if they wanted to take an opportunity. I don't know if that is some kind of, is there anything new coming up in the future from an educational standpoint that'll provide opportunities rather than learning in your own school, you can learn, multi-jurisdictional?
No, I think that's a great question, and those are the kind of conversations that we're having. And one of the things I've preached to our staff all year, we talk about returning to normal, but I like to remind our staff that it's really a new normal, that we need to take advantage of all the things we've learned throughout the pandemic and make sure that the things that are successful continue to be in place. And some of those include the distance learning piece. Our curriculum department is working in collaboration with the Medina Educational Service Center, as well as all the other school districts in Medina County, and we're in the process of exploring a potential online school for next year that would be a county-wide initiative. I'm not sure quite yet where that's going to go. We're still meeting and working through those details, but we are having those conversations. In addition, just the day-to-day work I see changing as well. And I'll be honest with you, I never really video conferenced until the pandemic hit. I didn't know what Zoom was until the pandemic hit. So it was learning at the beginning, but it's become a regular tool that we utilize. In terms of our offices, even though we are able to meet now, we still utilize the virtual meetings simply because it saves time. And it's more productive within the buildings rather than having our principals travel for meetings. In addition, I see that continuing with our teachers and our students as well, where snow day is a good example that often comes up. With snow days, there is the possibility that rather than it being a snow day, it be an online learning day. So those are things districts are looking into as well.
Thank you. Does anybody else have any comments or questions here in council? Anybody? Yeah, okay.
Is SOAR an acronym, and if so, what does it stand for?
It's funny you say that because we've talked about that several times this year, and we have yet to figure out what SOAR stands for.
Okey doke.
As soon as we know, though, we will let you know.
And what was the name of the company that you said that you're
Battelle
working
for
with?
Kids.
What is it?
Battelle.
Battelle? How do you spell that?
B-A-T-T-E-L-L-E.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thanks. So that was a great presentation. And as far as our collaborative efforts, I mean, everybody received a list of, it goes to Double D on the list. And I don't know, Mayor, if you want to highlight any of them specifically that are new to the relationship between the school district and the city, or if there's anything that stands out as something that was a unique opportunity that we're able to take advantage of maybe during this past year.
Thank you, Mr. President. So before I get to the collaborations, I just want to mention that for the viewers that both, or the city collaborates not only with the Medina City School District, but with Buckeye School District, which is in the western sector of our city, as well as with the Career Center, as far as equipment and presentations and some of the things that are listed. I don't know if this list is available to those at home. Is this?
I'm not sure. I don't know.
posted,
Jared,
Kathy?
at some point, could you put that up online? Yeah, he's shaking his head yes.
Okay. Some new collaborations that aren't necessarily with the schools, but for the benefit of the school officials is, since the last time we've met, the city of Medina has taken over fire operations for Medina Township as well. So now we're in Medina Township, Montville Township, and the city of Medina. And another new addition from a safety force perspective is we were approached by Lafayette Township and requested to provide policing services because they appreciated our community policing model and preferred to have that in their township. And we've been providing that for getting close to 2 years now. At the end of this summer will be 2 years. The other thing, other than the list of collaborations, is we've made a real concerted effort here to grow our industrial tax base, well, our tax base in general. The industry is one thing. We had Carlisle Brake and Friction close a plant in Oklahoma and come down, bring all those jobs here. They were so impressed with that experience with the city that they closed for the most part, closed the corporate office in Solon? Am I remembering that? In Solon, and brought all of their corporate offices down here as well. They've got a few people left, I think, maybe some engineering folks still in Solon. But the payroll for their corporate office alone was close to $6 million. And when you talk to the president of that company, they told them it was because of their experience here with getting their permits, keeping the processes on date, accomplishing what we said we would accomplish, meeting their needs. So that's helpful to us because then we have those CEOs do public information testimonials, because if another company is looking at Medina and they hear a testimonial from a CEO versus me talking about how good the city may be, or Mr. Coyne talking about how good the city may be, it just helps us. So we've had a number of our industries do that. Fire decks doubled in size, literally doubled in size. When Fire decks started, they made the firefighter uniforms, pants and coat. And then they bought a helmet company, and then they bought a boot company, and then they bought a glove company. And when most corporations, now some of these are out of the country, e.g. Mexico, some of them are in southern states, and rather than taking the jobs from the north to the southern states, because of their experience in working with Medina, they chose to bring all the operations here. So they literally doubled the size of their operation, and they now make equipment from head to toe for firefighters. And they've also created a whole new line, and may need another addition, to actually re-clean and sanitize some of the uniforms where a person maybe has been in a hazmat situation, or it was damaged so much because of the fire, but instead of replacing it, it's cheaper to put it through some processes of cleaning and revitalize it. So we have that going for us. So industry is one side of it. The other thing, I believe that the schools have benefited as well, but when we did the Route 42 corridor, we've seen massive improvement in retail and occupancy, and some of them was, you know, the old Wendy's is going to tear the building down, rebuild a brand new Wendy's on the same site. They bought a little parcel next door to expand their parking and traffic movement. Taco Bell is doing exactly the same thing. The Eaton Park is going to become Chick-fil-A for Mr. Shields. He's been trying for that for as long as I've been mayor, maybe longer. And that's going to be a great location for them. Now, again, they're not going to go in the old building. They're going to tear that down. In fact, that's going to start in the next week or so. And then that Chick-fil-A is going to be there. And there's no doubt in my mind when the Chick-fil-A moves in there, that's going to increase the vitality of that whole area there, to where the Ruby Tuesdays next to it will likely be leased pretty shortly as well. So there's a lot of vibrancy in the retail market as well. Our square has been full for the last 7 to 8 straight years, and there's a lot of desire and demand to be downtown, but we just don't have the space, and that's why we're looking to work with the Rose properties to create apartments within the downtown, which again will help with the tax base, 3 floors of apartments, and somewhere between 3 and 5 commercial spaces on the lower end, because we have no commercial spaces available near the square, and that's where folks want to be. Now, there's also little doubt in my mind that as this 18 corridor improves from Nettleton Road to our hospital, that we'll likely see the same investment and revitalization of that entire corridor as well. And I share all of that for the public's benefit as well as our school board members, because the more growth from job-wise, from investment-wise, helps with the property tax base and helps the county, helps the schools, helps the city, and we all benefit from it. So if you'd like, Mr. Coyne, I can go over some of these. I mean, a lot of them are what we've been doing for a long time. I do appreciate Superintendent Sable mentioning that this is not the norm, and it takes collaboration and cooperative partners. You know, it's one thing if you know, the school wanted to collaborate and the city wasn't cooperative, or vice versa. But by having collaborative partners, we have a great relationship with Medina City Schools, the other two school districts, with Medina County, with the surrounding townships. And in my mind, and I don't want to speak for council, they can speak for themselves, but I think they share the same view that these are everybody's tax dollars. And the more efficiently and as effectively that we can spend these, whether they be for city purposes, school purposes, county purposes, township purposes, everybody wins then, instead of duplicating things over and over again. So, sorry. Would you like me to read the list?
Well, I think everybody has a list. I don't know if there's anything new that came about, and I think there is a few things because of the previous year and the pandemic that occurred, some other interactions that we developed that didn't occur before. I mean,
Okay.
there's just a few of them we can.
I got a couple. Okay, so the Performing Arts Center, just in the last month or so, that's C there, we're going to increase the responsibility of the Medina TV staff to take over the Performing Arts Center, scheduling and handling things there. It used to be split between a number of people, so that's new. D below it is we're going to add in this upcoming school year another full-time another full-time SRO. We were sharing SRO is School Resource Officer. We were sharing the one school resource officer. We had a full-time at the high school and one full-time, but it was split between Claggett and Root. And because of a grant we got through the McDack levy, we're able to add a third school resource officer this year, and then we'll have a full-time SRO at each middle school. And one of them had been teaching DARE and will also continue to teach DARE at our elementary schools. It may be since we talked the last time that we began purchasing office supplies together, and because of the efficiencies of bulk buying, that helps both the schools and the city. Since we met the last time, the Bowman Lane House, this is O or 0? O, I guess, because these are letters. The Bowman House Lane was provided to the schools, and the schools bought the house that was moved next to Mellert Park on North Huntington Street, which gave us the ability, or will give us the ability, we're not quite there yet, to first of all, we added that parkland, but then expand that parking that many times gets overrun. We've created a disaster recovery location. Letter U is in Union. At the Medina High School for city operations, so every day we back up our computers to another server over there, and we're in the final steps, thanks to IT staff at Medina Schools, to permit us to also create another server for the phone system. That was a problem. It took us probably 18 months to work through with Frontier, because it's not just as easy as turning this computer off and turning one over there. They physically, with their systems, they physically have to go over and move wires and flip switches to make that work. But through the work of the city and the school's IT department, we're very close to getting that in place. Jansen mentioned to me that I'm down to AA now, Kathy. The city parks are reserved at no cost to Medina City Schools and parent-teacher organizations. And I'm sorry, just above that, Kathy, is Z as in zebra. We executed a land use agreement between the city and Medina City Schools, which permitted a connector trail to be built from Eliza Northrop Elementary to Reagan Park. And the benefit of that is it provides additional parking for events at the school. And when the school's not being used, but there's major events at the park, folks can park up at the school parking lot in the evenings or weekends when school's not operational, or the summer for that matter, and then just go down the trail and access the parks, which keeps people from parking in the grass in illegal areas. I think that's it, Mr. Clark.
That's great. Well, as you can see, we have a lot of separate activities and continue to grow those activities. I'm not sure if anybody has any ideas now, not to put anybody on the spot, that is a possibility for a further collaborative effort, maybe in a different segment, or maybe something that there is a need to have occur that we both could do together to help each other. I'm not sure if anybody had any thoughts or anything with regard to that. I mean, that's Mr. Simpson?
Thank you. And I'd just like to thank Superintendent Sabo and the rest of the school board and staff that are here for agreeing to do this again. And as Mayor Hanwell mentioned, it's so important and rare that a school district in a city would get together and collaborate on so many things. You know, I've always said, and many times when I talk to people that talk about public office, you know, there's reasons that people choose a community, and the obvious reasons. I mean, we all know it's number one is healthcare, number two is the school system, three is usually the safety services, four is religious reasons, churches that are available, and the city and surrounding communities, I mean, provide great marks on all that. But this. And I'm glad that Jared and the cable staff is going to provide this online, the list of the collaboration. You know, I've said in recent months, and I think you've all experienced it over the years, when hot button topics come up, you know, whether it's the school board or council or administration, the public can, just because they're not informed properly, we can get beat up pretty bad. And I think when the public realizes how just these two entities alone, the school staff and administration and school board and the city, has collaborated on all these items alone to benefit not just the schools, but to benefit the city and to benefit the taxpayer's pocketbook. They couldn't help but be impressed. So I hope the journalists that are here will periodically promote publishing these lists, so the constituents will again be able to look at it and realize that their school board, their school superintendent, and the city administration and council are continually working together to make things better for our community. And the shared responsibilities, I think, proves that. Thank you. Thank you again for coming tonight.
Thank you, Denny. Does any other council member have any kind of comment or addition to add? Mr. Rose?
Just very briefly, I wholeheartedly support everything Councilman Simpson said. Thank you.
That was quick.
Mr.
Shields?
I just want to point out how much we appreciate the resources of the city. I know John and I can tell you that Dan Gladish, our building official, you know, just as recent as this air conditioning, you can call Dan and he'll give you ideas and ways to help us out. He did it last year on a roof project where he came over. Nino and Service Director Pat Patton, they talk to Rob Travis on a regular basis as far as closing roads or construction to make sure that they coordinate first with transportation and what works well with our buses. There's a lot of behind-the-scene things that aren't on here that just a great relationship with the people that I've had to call Jansen before for picnics with the elementary buildings, and he'll have a porta potty there right away, or he'll make sure it's empty before the kids get there. There's just so many things that we're lucky that we have such great relationships where we can call and ask if something could be done last minute, and everybody at the city takes care of it.
Thanks. Mrs. Hazeltine?
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I just want to echo everything that the other council members have said. Being a mom that has children in Medina City schools, I have come to know some of you on the board and the people that work for the school system over the past couple years. And I just thank you for all that you do. I couldn't ask for anything better for my kids. I'm 100% acknowledge the fact that unfortunately in these times, when you count the times that your children are sleeping, or as a divorced parent when they're at their other parents, the teachers are the people that are with my kids the most. And I'm happy to say that I trust implicitly every educator that's ever had my children in their hands, so thank you very much. Secondly, I had somebody, I'd like to monitor the Facebook feed while we're doing this, and Cheryl Hendrickson has informed me that SOAR stands for Schools Online Achievement Reports. There you go. Thank you again.
Thank you. Does anybody from the school board or the administration have any comments or additions?
Just again, want to thank you for having us out, and thank you for the comments that the mayor gave and recapping the partnership. And I think of a speech the mayor gave a couple years ago, one of the State of the Cities, and he talked about that in the city, if there's a job to do and you're not in that department, that you still do that job. And I kind of think of that, the schools try to do that too, and I think that this partnership, in essence, is really that we all want to do what's best for the community, and we recognize that having a safe community and having a vibrant town and vibrant schools are really what attract people to live here and to raise families and to stay here sometimes after they've raised their families too. So I think we all recognize the value of that and the partnership of the rec center and everything that we do there. So John, we appreciate you having us out tonight. Thank you very much. If there.
Thank you. Yes, I want to thank you for having us here as well. It is great to have the opportunity to be here to see all of you, and also to see the great new facility that you have here. It looks very, very nice and is an improvement. Before was fine, but I do like this. This just seems warmer, and I like it. It's very nice. So thank you. Couple things. One thing I didn't notice on here, I just was looking now, and Mr. Skidmore made a reference to it, but was our partnership with the rec center. We sometimes get some confusion from community members, and maybe it's even people that aren't City of Medina residents but actually live in the townships, because they know that the building of the rec center is owned by the district, but it is operated by the city. And we were able to amend our joint operating agreement, I think last year. So that is just a really great collaboration that this district has with the city, and we appreciate that partnership that we have with you. One thing I guess this is a comment and a question. Mr. Sable mentioned one of the things that the district is going to be looking at is the redistricting, because we do have disproportionate socioeconomics areas. So the townships are growing, it seems, in terms of new housing. The great thing about Medina is nobody ever wants to leave it. That says a lot about the city of Medina and what a great place it is to leave. As a result, we're not getting a lot of new families, and people aren't able to get a lot of affordable housing because there aren't really that many homes available in the city. The OFCC, when they were looking at our buildings that we might need to repair or replace, did a population study, and our district has been declining enrollment ever so slightly the past few years. They're anticipating a possible, at the time they did the study, a possible continuation of declining enrollment. I guess my question for the city and for council is, have you done any studies in terms of population, or are you aware, are there areas of the city that can be developed that might bring in new young families?
Yeah, so the problem with the city is we have so little available lots left, and those that are left are problematic, like they're in a low area, so you would need a lift to get the sewage up to the sewer lines, things like that. And when I say a handful, like probably less than 10 or so. What we're seeing in the city is a rehab of houses, sometimes a house taken down that's not in the best of shape, and then a brand-new house built, which again improves the property value. But the large housing complexes, I'm sorry, the other thing we're seeing in the city is more, because there's such limited residential land left, cluster homes, condos, townhouses, where they can get more density on a piece versus half or quarter acre lots. Now when you go into the townships, because they changed their zoning to be more in line with the cities, the lots aren't as large as they were. So those areas are going to continue to grow and grow at a much more rapid pace than the city will. And part of that was done, I know Mr. Coyne and I believe Mr. Shields were on council, but we, the council at the time, I was still over at the police department, but we made an intentional choice back in the late 80s, or mid 80s?
Early 2000s, I think.
Early 2000, to not annex and keep the city. And part of the reasoning with that, which I respect, was to keep the small town feel, as well as the cost of services. At the time, our income tax rate was 0.5%, and to continue to add more and more residential, the cost of residential versus industrial or commercial on the services of the city, the 0.5% just wasn't covering it. So fortunately for us, well, first they decided not to annex, so that kind of locked us in the land that we have. And then secondly, the voters approved back in around 2002 to increase our tax rate to 1.25 from the 0.5%, 1.25%, with a partial credit on the new 0.75. And 20% of that new money through the ballot language was dedicated to road improvements. So that's roughly for the city $2.3, $2.4 million a year. And as the income tax goes up, so does that. So as a lot of the other communities were not able during the tighter financial times to continue with road improvements, the city was, because the ballot language restricted that money only for that purpose, and it couldn't be moved to something else. As a result of that, like the North Court project, that was supposed to be a few years further down the road than it was, but a number of the other cities couldn't come up with their matching funds to then do the state project. And we've done other major road projects in our community that because others didn't have the money available, we were able to take part of those dollars through ODOT. Now, the other thing it permitted us to do was to build the industrial base. We replaced every single road, almost every single road. There's a couple, Commerce Drive was not replaced, North Progress Drive was not replaced, Progress Drive was not replaced. But all of Smith, all of Lake, portions there by Lafayette, and the result of that is then the industry blossomed because it looked like a city that cared. The reason I share that with you is that same 2.4 million, if we take a small portion of that and use it for the bond payments over 20 years, we can get those things done, get them done faster, and get the benefit of that tax revenue, both for the schools, the county, the city, as well as still have enough to still keep working on our roads. Now that we've got the industry done, our focus is going to be, we're going to pull, we're going to rebond some more dollars and do the same concerted effort in some of our residential areas, particularly the main feeder streets and things like that your buses use day in and day out, and that our residents use day in and day out. So, Mr. Coyne, I don't know if you'd like to add anything, or
Well,
Mr.
I don't think we're
Shields?
going to do those during school time, are we? I think that was one of the biggest issues is
Do what?
close the roads.
Close repair? No, we do our best not to.
Okay. The kids would like that, though.
I was just going to add, I know Mrs. Parker's asked about housing, and one of our first projects that we teamed up with Medina Metropolitan Housing on was our senior complex down on what's known as the Acme property on South Court. Well, we've also been working with Medina Metropolitan Housing on some affordable housing for workers that would be close to our industrial area. and we continue to have some conversations about that. And then also we started putting in a sidewalk all the way out Lafayette Road so that that would also be a way for people to get out to the industrial area for workers. So we are looking at some other housing projects with Medina Metropolitan Housing.
And I think we're trying to expand that. However, the problem that we run into is we're trying to provide all these services and making Medina more attractive, which drives house prices up, which is self-defeating, of course. Because I think, you know, right now when a house goes on the market, I've been talking to various brokers, they have 10 offers in the first day, and it's over the asking price. So that's not really going to help the issue about affordable housing. And I don't know, it's bad and good in a way. We're doing such a great job that everybody wants to come here, and the people who live here that need to move, you know, they're going to make a lot of money, but it does, you're correct, it does not attract, and we do not have enough of affordable housing, and that's always going to be a challenge to try to figure out how to accommodate that.
Thank you. I appreciate that. And it, just since we were talking about collaboration, it's as we start looking at our redistricting, it's going to be important to see which areas are growing, so it helps us to redistrict to the correct buildings, appropriate buildings. So thank you.
Sure.
And one last thing, Mr. Shields mentioned sidewalks, and I did want to, as an aside, thank City Services for the curb they eliminated on Sturbridge across the street from AI Route. That's my neighborhood, and for a long time, my kids riding their bikes, you couldn't cross that crosswalk because there was that curb there. So thank you for taking care of that.
Thank you. Any other questions? Mrs. Hazeltine?
Try to follow my train of thought here. So we're talking redistricting, we're talking diversity earlier, and it occurs to me that a lot of the children in Ward 1 are districted to either Garfield or Canavan. Now, I believe, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that Garfield is one of the most diverse population of children in the city, as Ward 1 is the most diverse population in the city. So I'm wondering, when you said that Garfield has the lowest amount of enrollment, is that due to population or is that due to opt-outs?
That's due to population.
Okay.
And we have students that not only transfer out of Garfield to go to other schools, but we have students that transfer in to go to Garfield as well.
As they should. Garfield's
I agree.
greatest.
Thank you. Any other comments?
Just one.
Mr. Rodriguez.
I just wanted to add, as a community member, I feel pretty lucky, and as a school board member, and I'll tell you why. Because, you know, we host an event every year, a half marathon, and the mayor and his staff, all of you sitting right there, Jansen, Keith, Eddie, Nino, you make it very easy. You made it so easy for us to get those permits and everything to have the event. And in addition to taking part in the event, being our official starter every year, and Keith has volunteered at the race, and so.
I just want to say I ran it once. I'm really happy with that.
Outstanding, yes, very good. But I say all that, and thank you for that, Keith, because you always have been interested in our success, and you've helped us. You bend over backwards for us. I called Jansen one morning at, I don't know, it was 5 o'clock that Saturday to help with those spider boxes. And you just zipped right out there, so I appreciate that. But I say that because you're always interested in our success. And so you take that up to a huge level. Now we're talking the school district, and you look at that list of collaborations, and it's the same thing. You are so interested and invested in our success, and which is hugely important, because the kids and the parents need to see this and know this so that their experience as they're going through the school district from K through 12 is very pleasant. They don't have any issues. And so we really appreciate all the help you give us, and that list is, like Aaron, we were talking before the meeting, it's very unique in our community. And so I just want to thank you all for that. So much appreciated.
Thank you. Any other comments?
I just wanted to say, I know that from a district standpoint, we are very grateful, but also from a community member, you have all been always responsible or always responsive if there's ever been a need or a question, and I really appreciate that. I was in the rec center earlier today, and it was really cool to see a couple of the courts where our high school was running basketball camps, and then on the other side, you had the adults that were working out, and just to see everybody come together under there. And Jansen, the building is in great shape. Thank you for that. But again, just thank you for all that you do for our city. is much appreciated. I know oftentimes we hear all the negative and not the positive very often, so thank you.
Thank you. Well, if there's no other questions, I think we can recess out of the joint meeting. I know that the school board would like to reconvene into a work session. So if there's no other questions, I guess I'll say that at 6:30 we recess into a short break, and then the school board can reconvene into their work session. So we're in recess. Thank you.
Good evening. We want to welcome everybody back on the record for the work session for Medina City Schools Board of Education for our June 7th, 2021 meeting. We already took roll call earlier, so we don't need to do that. I would like to entertain a motion to accept the agenda or ask if there's any additions, removals, or modifications. I guess first, if the board has none other than what's presented, if you want to make a motion to accept the agenda, we would entertain that.
I'll make a motion to accept the consent agenda.
Thank you, Mrs. Pavlik.
I'll
Do you have a
second.
second? Thank you, Mr. Ross. Any questions or comments? Hearing none, if you could call roll.
Ms. Pavlik?
Aye.
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst?
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore?
Aye.
Thank you.
Mr. Sable?
Well, our work session agenda here is going to be fairly quick because I believe I talked about most of the things I was going to mention during the joint session. And I know it doesn't need repeating. In terms of the end of the school year, I did want to mention, I'm kind of combining this with summer initiatives, that we've actually been working to prepare for next school year for the past at least month, if not longer. Anything from personnel and hiring to curriculum to facilities. So we really do already have a lot of work into next school year, and that work is going to continue over the summer. Our students are going to be attending our summer school classes. We have an expanded summer school this year, which we put in place due to COVID. We've identified students who are going to attend in person and be bused, which is a first for us, the summer school program, to make sure that their academics are where they need to be entering into the next school year. In addition, we're also offering an online summer school, which is for any student, and that is rolling as well. And we actually tonight have several recommendations for teachers who are going to be part of that summer school program. In terms of our facilities, roofers are already hard at work. I think it was the end of last week they started delivering the pallets behind the high school to do the roofing projects for the district. So that's what those big white squares are behind the high school. And today I saw ladders up on the high school, so they're starting to get up on the roofs. In terms of the air conditioning, we do have action items tonight, and the main reason why we do is because we want to make sure that the board approves the items that need to be done in order to do the air conditioning this summer so it's ready for the fall. So I think John Burkhart and Steve Mishler and his department for the work that they've done in making that happen in a very short turnaround. Very short. We found we could use the ESSER funds and didn't have a lot of time to make it happen, but fortunately we were able to make that happen for our students and our teachers heading into next school year. We are going to continue with our strategic planning process. I do anticipate having further discussions with the board regarding the strategic plan. We actually received a rough draft of goals just recently, and we have a meeting scheduled to go through those goals and review them. Once we get that organized, the intent is to share that out with the board and have a recommendation to the board by August, no later than September, so that plan can go into place for the coming school year. The last thing I wanted to talk about is June and July board meetings, and part of this is my fault and part of it isn't. We have our June board meeting currently scheduled for the 21st of June. I am going to be on vacation that week, so I want to discuss with the board the possibility of moving that meeting. And Mrs. Parkhurst and Mr. Skidmore and I had discussed about moving that possibly to the 28th, if that works for the board members. Okay, great. So we'll go ahead and make that adjustment. The other meeting is July. We have 2 meetings currently scheduled in July, a work session as well as the regular meeting. Historically, We have either canceled both meetings in July or just held one meeting, simply because board business is much slower during that month and people tend to be out of town. We did purposely schedule 2 meetings for the month because we don't know in advance what the situation is going to be, so we wanted to make sure they were on the calendar. We did utilize both of them, I think, plus last year because of the pandemic. So I'd like to suggest to the board that we reduce the July meeting to a single meeting. And I don't remember if we talked about a potential date. I think we were looking at the 19th as a possibility.
Mr. Sable, I'll be probably out of town on that
Okay.
date, so I will not be present.
What about the 12th? That's right in between.
The 12th, I'm here.
Okay, great. So we'll do a regular / work session meeting on the 12th. Thank you. Just the one.
Mr. Sable?
I'm out of town the 12th. Are you out of town the 12th?
I'm not, but I had 2 questions. I didn't know if we would need one closer to August for personnel items, if the 12th would be too soon, as well as I didn't know if we need to take board action because we had approved these meetings at our organizational meeting.
In terms of personnel, it does help us to have that meeting. We don't have to have it. The board had passed policy a couple years ago allowing me to pre-approve hires. Obviously, they're not official until the board approves. I do know it makes Jim a little bit nervous because we do get candidates who are looking to get out of their contract. So my question is to Jim, when's the best time? I'm guessing it's going to be the beginning of July.
It would be. I was going to say, too, I'm fine with the 12th if we could just reserve the right, if anybody needs out of their contract by July 10th, that we could have like a morning meeting where at least 3 people could come. Every once in a while, I'll get somebody that the only way they can come to Medina is if they are board approved before the July 10th deadline.
Well, what if we kept the board work session on the 9th and ran that as the double meeting? July. Oh, I'm in August. I'm sorry. I'll be out of town the 26th.
So, Mr. Shields, I'm sorry, you said it needs to be before the 10th?
Yes, every once in a while, there's a few that,
Okay.
that's the only way they're going to be able to get out of their contract if they're board approved with us before July 10th.
Okay.
Yes.
But as long as we could at least do 3, because we'll have that July, or June 28th, which will be getting pretty close, that will be okay.
Well, we don't necessarily have to do a Monday either. I mean, if we did like a July 8th, that's a Thursday. Plan on July 8th.
Is that okay with you?
And we'll get communication out to the community as well as the press.
So Mr. Sable will be, oh, sorry about
Yeah,
that. Will that be the only meeting in July then?
that's up to the board.
Okay.
Yeah, definitely up for discussion.
Okay.
So you're looking at July 8th, then we would do our regular 6 PM, but just have potentially one meeting for the month of July. That sounds like.
Correct.
Okay. Does that work for everybody this here? Okay, thank you.
If there's no other questions or discussion from the board, the next thing up is our action items. The first action item is field trips for 21-22. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following overnight field trips in compliance with Policy 2340 for the summer of 21 and 21-22 school year. Number 2 is also field trips. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following overnight field trip in compliance with Policy 2340 for the 22-23 school year. I do think it's important to point out, and Mr. Skidmore said this at the beginning of the meeting, it's nice to see these field trips back on the agenda for approval. So many of these were canceled, if not all of them, last summer. And then the historical educational learning trip to Ireland and Scotland. This is dependent upon students signing up for this trip. So once board approves, then the advisor will go and see what kind of interest there is and start raising funds. Number 3, it is recommended that the Board of Education adopt the resolution to declare Sidney Fenn Elementary School's electrical upgrades an urgent necessity and award a contract to R.J. Martin Electric for this project in the amount of $115,945,000. This is in order to be able to install air conditioning into that building. The reason why it is asking for it to be declared as a necessity is because if it's not, the project won't be able to be completed prior to the beginning of next school year. Number 4, it is recommended that the Board of Education adopt the resolution to award a contract to Gardiner Solution Company for HVAC equipment, parts, and design build services at Ella Canavan Elementary School in the amount of approximately $525,000, utilizing the Ohio Schools Council's HVAC and Design Build Solutions contract. Number 5, it is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following service agreement for the 2021 school year. And this is for special education services per individual child's needs. Number 6, also educational services. It is recommended that the Board of Education approve the following service agreements for the 21-22 school year. I do want to point out that there is an increase in the contract for Melissa Cottage. The reason for that is an increase in hours needed. So she's going to be working an increased amount of hours in order to meet required IEP requirements. And number 7 is personnel. It is recommended to the board to approve the following personnel recommendations pending completion of all appropriate paperwork per our Human Resources Department. One thing I do want to point out here is that I am requesting from the board additional employment days of up to 15 for our new principal, Alyssa Tadona, so she can come in the summer and prepare for the upcoming school year. This August, we have a short August. We only have 2 weeks before school starts. So this would be per my approval of the use of the days, and this has been done in the past for similar type positions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Sable. So we have action item E, 1 through 7. Does the board need anything separated out on that? If not, somebody want to make a motion to accept those items?
I'll make a motion to accept the action items from the superintendent.
Second.
Thank you, Mrs. Parkhurst. Thank you, Mr. Ross. Any questions or comments on the action items from the board?
One question, both the electrical for Fenn and Canavan, that's the ESSER money?
Yes.
Thank you.
I just wanted to thank the administration and John for working so quickly to get that done. It's such a great thing to have done, and a little nervous maybe it couldn't happen, but now it looks like it's going to, so thank you.
Thank you. Very good. Any questions or comments from the public that's here tonight? Hearing none, if you could call roll.
Ms. Parkhurst?
Aye.
Mr. Ross?
Aye.
Ms. Pavlik?
Aye.
Mr. Skidmore?
Aye.
Thank you.
And at this time, we have public participation. Is there anybody from the public that would like to address the board tonight? Hearing none, we will proceed to executive session. I would like to make a motion that we enter into executive session to consider the appointment, employment, and compensation of a public employee or official, preparations for conducting or reviewing negotiations or bargaining sessions with employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment. I make that motion.
I'll second.
Thank you, Mrs. Pavlik. If you could please call roll.
Yes, Mr. Skidmore.
Aye.
Ms. Pavlik.
Aye.
Mr. Ross.
Aye.
Ms. Parkhurst.
Aye.
Thank you.
And entering tonight,
Tonight, we'll have Mr. Shields as well as Dr. Qualick. In addition, Derek Tauster, the board attorney, will be joining for a portion as well, and he'll be through video conference.
and Mina will join us too.
Oh, that's up to you, Mina. Yes, Mina's going to join us for the beginning.
Okay, and then when we come back to adjourn, there'll be no action items. Thank you.